Welcome. I hope you're blessed in the Lord today. In this video, we want to ask the question, what is the abomination of desolation that stands in the holy place? Now, this might be a controversial subject. It doesn't need to be. A lot of people have a lot of speculation about this issue and this topic, but we want to take out the speculation, go to the plain teaching of Scripture, see what it says, and then understand it. And this is not... This video, and even some of the videos that have been related to end times, is not related to this system or that system of theology or eschatology, but what we're looking at is just what the Scripture says about some of these issues that are often mentioned when eschatology comes up. So let's go and look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. So when you see the abomination of desolation, Jesus speaking, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not return to take his clothes. Woe to those who are with child and to those who are nurse in those days. Pray that your escape will not be in the winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until now, not ever, and nor ever shall be. Unless those days were shortened, no one would be saved, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. So, we need to ask the question, what is this abomination of desolation that was spoken of by Daniel, but now here is applied by Jesus Christ, spoken of Daniel standing in the holy place. What is this holy place speaking about? So we have to ask this question. Now, when Matthew was writing his gospel, he was writing the gospel with Hebrew believers in mind, with people that would understand the Old Testament Scripture, people that would understand the references that were made. But Luke, thankfully, was written to a more Gentile audience, and so he uses more plain language. And so we're able to find out what was spoken about over here. If we turn to Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, verse 20. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are in the city depart, and let not those who are in the country enter in. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things will be written will be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who nurse in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led away captive to all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So hopefully we can see very clearly this is a parallel passage. It's just spoken in more common language. So in verse 20, Jesus says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, so that's the abomination of desolation. There's armies that are going to surround Jerusalem. Then you will know that its desolation is drawn near. What is the holy place? If we flip back to Matthew 24, verse 15. So when you see the abomination of desolation, this is going to be the armies, spoken of by Daniel standing in the holy place that's surrounding Jerusalem, then we know that its desolation is near. This is the abomination of desolation. The abomination is going to be the Roman Empire and the Roman armies that came in 70 AD to destroy the nation of Israel. This is what happened in 70 AD. Now, how do we know it's talking about that time? If we flip back to chapter 21, Luke 21, verse 5. As some spoke of how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts, he said, as for these things which you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left on another that will not be thrown down. They asked, Teacher, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when this is about to happen? So, when will the temple that they were looking at, a temple, he says, these stones that you're seeing right now are going to be torn down. When would that happen, and what would be the sign it's about to happen? The sign that it was about to happen was when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, verse 20, then you know its desolation has drawn near. Then you know that Jerusalem, the holy place, and the temple, the most holy place that was there in Jerusalem, is going to be torn down. So we know that he was talking about that time. We're able to see this further as we go in verse 21, verse 22. For these are the days of vengeance, in that all things which are written will be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who nurse in those days. For there will be great distress in the land. Which land? The land of Israel. And wrath upon this people. What people? The people of Israel. They will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led away captive to all nations. Which is exactly what happened in 70 AD. Jerusalem was sacked by Rome in AD 70, and then many were killed in many horrible ways, and then they were spread throughout the nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So we can see that this happened back in the past, and they were scattered abroad, and there was going to be history after this point until the end. Now, if we go back to Matthew chapter 24, we see here, verse 21. It says, "For then will be great tribulation, such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until now, no, nor ever shall be." So, up to that time in 70 AD, Jesus is saying this is going to be the worst thing that's happened. And after that, he's saying that nothing's going to be like it in the future. So whether we want to accept that or not, this is just simply what Jesus is speaking. This doesn't mean that there is not maybe a second fulfillment of this passage that's still yet to take place in the future. Oftentimes when the prophets spoke, for example, Isaiah 13, speaking of Babylon, it also had a hint that it was speaking about the end of the world. So here we can take Matthew chapter 24, Luke chapter 21. We can take them in the sense of that it was talking about AD 70, but AD 70 was looking forward to something that's going to happen greater at the end of time. So there's no biblical issue with that. But when we ask the question, what is the abomination of desolation that surrounded the holy place? We know that that was the armies of Rome that surrounded Jerusalem in AD, actually it started in 67, I believe, and then finally concluded with the sack of Jerusalem in AD 70. And then the Jews, many of them were killed, and they were cast and spread around all throughout the world until today, when now many of them have gone back to the land of Israel, but most are still scattered throughout the world. And so I want us to see that's just the clear interpretation. It was the temple that they were looking at. Jesus said that these buildings that you see will be torn down. What's the sign that they will be torn down? That the armies would surround Jerusalem. Then you know that its desolation is near. This is the abomination of desolation. Hope it's helpful to you. God bless.